So working with Andrew, he is chronologically appeared to be early to mid-20s and never said his exact age and development that he's a young adult. Diagnosis was Guillain-Barré syndrome, or GBS, and onset date was August 1st, 2016. Caution with dealing with people with GBS are pressure sores due to immobility, breathing difficulties, and blood clots. Relevant physical or behavioral medical history, he had none, so not applicable. Why is client seeking services? Client is aiming to recover strength and range of motion following development of GBS. Going down, client is recovering from a severe case of GBS. Prior to client's admittance to the hospital due to his GBS symptoms, the client had lived with his family in his family home. The video made no mention of any stairs that were required to enter the house or the number of stairs located inside of the home. So we are unable to know that information. Prior to his admittance, client did not use any medical equipment, but following his release from the hospital, client used crutches in order to aid in ambulation. Client was discharged from hospital and was able to return to living in his family home. Client's typical routine consists of waking up and working out at his gym. Client was not mentioned to currently be receiving any schooling. Prior to his hospitalization, client worked as a firefighter, and client was able to return to his position as a firefighter a few months after his release from the hospital. For leisure, client also enjoyed shooting firearms and working out. Prior to client admittance to hospital, client was independent in all ADL and IADL activities. During his hospital stay, the client progressed to requiring total assistance on all ADL and IADL tasks. Following discharge, the client has progressed to becoming independent in ADL and IADL tasks and modified independence with the use of a crutch for ambulation. Client noted that during his stay in the hospital, he felt constantly exhausted by even the action of breathing and was emotionally drained. Currently, client did not mention any negative perceptions about himself following discharge. While the client did not specifically name any goals can be assumed to be returning to his occupation as a firefighter and regaining the ability to be independent in his ADLs and IADLs. Client was supported and motivated by his family and fiance. Moving on to an intervention planning tool. Starting off, some of their client's strength includes his family, his friends that are very supportive of him, and the fact that prior to his incident, he was young, healthy, and had no other disabilities. The description of diagnosis, Guillain-Barré syndrome, is an autoimmune disorder in which a person's immune system targets the peripheral nervous system, causing muscle weakness and paralysis. Precautions, again, pressure sores due to immobility, blood clots, breathing difficulties. Problem list for Andrew is that he is suffering from weakness, fatigue, and lack of range of motion as a result from muscle atrophy and the shortening of muscle length due to disease following months of hospitalization with GBS, which limits him from completing ADL and IADL activities. He also suffers from possible emotional distress as a result of the sudden onset of symptoms and complete dependence due to his condition. Describing why there's areas of top priority, muscle strength, range of motion, and endurance all play crucial roles in the ability to independently complete ADLs and IADLs. As a result, targeting his shortcomings are crucial to enable Andrew to be able to return to his independent status as soon as possible. This will also help target his psychosocial issues as depression, such as his depression, as independence is restored to the client, hopefully being able to restore and elevate his mood and quality of life. Looking for long-term goals, client will be able to walk with modified independence with the use of a crutch by discharge, and client will play guitar independently for 10 minutes without requiring a break by discharge. Short-term goals that working towards long-term goals is client will walk to the sink to brush his teeth with modified assistance within 3 weeks. And then also client will stand at the sink for 5 minutes to complete daily grooming routine with 1 2-minute break within 2 weeks. Moving on to identifying specific intervention types. For the first intervention, or first short-term goal, preparatory strategies include utilizing electrical stimulation modalities as a preparatory method. This will help stimulate and strengthen client's muscles. Purposeful strategy for it. Short-term goal 1 is to have the client apply toothpaste to his toothbrush while seated. An occupation-based strategy for short-term goal 1 is to have the client walk with assistance from the therapist to get a drink. And then client program for short-term. Goal 1 is to have the client perform yoga outside of therapy sessions as a part of a home exercise program. Preparatory strategy for short-term. Goal 2 is the use of therapy to help build the motor strength and dexterity, fine motor dexterity. Purposeful activity for short-term. Goal 2 is to have the client hold the guitar pick and use it to strum against the iron. An occupational-based strategy for short-term. Goal 2 is to have the client practice playing his guitar for short periods of time. And a client program strategy for short-term. Goal 2 is to have client build fine motor dexterity by picking up coins using only the first and second digits under a time. Moving on to describing why these interventions will meet their goals. By having the client engage in tasks that aim to build up his strength, endurance, and fine motor dexterity while also completing everyday tasks that are of value to him in occupations. The client helps increase client's motivation while working towards total rehabilitation and improved quality of life. Moving on, for upgrading interventions, it can be done for the first goal. Upgrading interventions can be done by increasing the amount of e-stim used, by having the toothpaste lid need to be taken off by the client first, so you would have to unscrew it by himself. You can have the therapist only provide min assistance and mod assist when walking, or have weights on a walker when walking. You could assign harder yoga poses or remove items that help modify it, such as a yoga block, as well as you can increase the strength of the therapy to have the client have to work harder with his fingers. You can also have the client strum against harder materials, such as perhaps a piece of hard wire instead of soft yarns that requires more strength to strum it. As well as you can have client pick up smaller sized coins, such as a dime. Downgrading the interventions can be accomplished by decreasing the amount of e-stim used, by having the toothpaste already be opened and out for him, as well as possibly toothbrushes that come with toothpaste already on it, such as you would get in a dentist's office. Other ways to downgrade involve using a walker when ambulating, performing less intensive yoga poses, or adding items that can help modify it, such as again yoga blocks or yoga straps. You can decrease the strength and thickness of the therapy so it's easier to manipulate. You can have the client strum a soft piece of fabric with fingers, as well as finally you can have the client pick up quarters instead of, for instance, dimes, as the quarters are larger and easier to grab. For frame of reference supports these intervention ideas, primarily one being used as the biomechanical frame of reference, as it's aimed to restore his fine motor skills, strength, and endurance. And then what intervention approaches best support my selected activities are, that would be establish and restore, based on the fact that we are trying to help restore Andrew's independence, strength, endurance, and fine motor dexterity back to what was before he developed GBS, so he can return to his life prior to his entering into the hospital. Moving down for potential for improvement is good. Andrew has a high likelihood to improve and recover to full capacity or almost full capacity, as majority of people, around 90% who develop GBS, do make a full or partial recovery. And Andrew has made it through the worst parts of it. Frequency, I would like to see him 3 times a week for 12 weeks, for 60 minutes each session. Discharge recommendations, I would say discharge could be recommended when the client is independent and basic ADLs and almost all IADLs. Client should be able to walk with modified independence with the use of a crutch for at least 15 minutes before requiring a break due to exhaustion. And signed off on by Christopher Guest, OTS.